So yesterday, Donald Trump held a rally at Madison Square Gardens, which I thought was absolutely amazing because I watched the whole rally and it was just full of positive energy. We had speakers like Elon Musk, RFK Jr., and basically a whole host of people that support Donald Trump. And I really thought it was a positive rally. The energy was positive, the crowd were chanting, and what they focused on was the future of America. They didn't really speak about the other side. And this morning, when I woke up, I saw the title from Sky News, or I should say Sly News, that does Donald Trump's um, attendance or rally in Madison Square Gardens resemble the Nazis because they also had a rally in Madison Square Gardens. And I just thought that was so absolutely ridiculous. How can you compare Donald Trump to the Nazis? And what about all the other artists or political figures that had rallies at Madison Square Gardens? Are you going to compare them to Nazis as well, just because the Nazis had a rally there 80 years ago? So let's watch the video together and make up your own mind.
Of all the venues in all New York, he walks into this one. 9 days and counting before the election, Donald Trump chose the historic Madison Square Garden, where history can't hide the hosting of a Nazi rally in 1939. At that time, it was a gathering of American Nazis.
Yeah, but what connection does that have with Trump? Just because the Nazis held a rally there 80 years ago, why do you have to connect it to Trump? Like, what comparison is there between Trump and Hitler and the Nazis? Hitler killed 6 million Jews. Okay? Trump had no wars under his term. So I just don't understand why they are still fear-mongering, because we've had 4 years of Trump already. So do people really believe this? And I mean, I really mean this. If you believe the mainstream media narrative still, after all the things that have happened, you are stupid. I'm sorry to say, but this brainwashing shouldn't work on a 4-year-old, let alone an adult. Carrying on.
Sympathizers. At this time, Trump's opponents are drawing a parallel between the past and present.
Can you let me answer the question?
Ahead of the rally, Trump supporters rallied round.
Donald Trump is the furthest from a fascist imaginable. You know who's a fascist?
Not according to his close aides, Mr. Giuliani.
Not according to the leftist, socialist, communist media.
His former senior military advisor.
His former
His
senior
chief of staff.
military advisor is well known to me. He was fired.
That's because opponents are dumb and they're losing, so now they're trying to do anything to get a rise out of voters, man. Stop that. Be better.
This was a set piece to bring scale and stature.
So this was the rally. I watched the whole thing and it was just full of positive energy, people chanting, clapping. There was no violence. All the speakers were positive. So I don't know how Sly News can then compare this to a Nazi rally.
To the campaign close. It was a Trump-themed variety show with 25 speakers on the bill. Some had a harder edge than others.
I go, sure. Out of character for me to speak at a Nazi rally. I was just in Israel, but I took the gig.
But there's literally a floating island of garbage in the middle of the ocean right now. Yeah. I think it's called Puerto Rico.
We might have seen them.
I love how they pick and choose also the speeches and they play sentences out of context. You know, because the same guy that said the thing about Puerto Rico, he also made a joke about Kamala Harris, which obviously they're not going to show on Sly News. And he basically said that all these celebrities that support Kamala Harris, such as Beyonce and Leo DiCaprio, all of a sudden the Kamala Harris camp is looking like a Diddy party. So obviously Sly News wouldn't show that. But all these people that are now hanging out with Kamala Harris used to also hang out with P. Diddy and Jeffrey Epstein.
Make-up of a second Trump administration.
Again, picking and choosing
Elon Musk
out of
was
context.
part of the warm-up.
The future is gonna be amazing.
The story told by the headliner was of his opponent.
To make her president would be a gamble with the lives of millions and millions of people. She would get us into World War III. We're very close to World War III.
For all the discussion about the location, there's a certainty in Trump's team that any controversy will blow over. Their candidate, after all, has the baggage of sexual abuse, business fraud, a criminal conviction. There was a time when any one of these things would have been terminal to a
All phony cases, by the way. A lot of them were dropped, but also the sexual assault claim is just absolutely ridiculous if you go and read through what actually happened. The only reason why he's accused of sexual assault is that he walked into a women's changing room in a supermarket after the women approached him first. And then he has to pay like 80 million just because he walked into a female changing room like 40 years ago. And the women didn't talk about it until he became president. So why didn't she say this before? Anyway.
political career. But look at this.
They're comparing him to Hitler, who killed millions and millions of innocent people, sent them to ovens and burnt them. I mean, this is a disgrace.
That's preposterous and ridiculous. It's disgusting.
The main attraction at the Garden left, ambition achieved. A lifetime first for Donald Trump as he bids for the lifetime second. James Matthews, Sky News in New York.
Okay, so then, as you saw, Sky News are basically trying their best to make Donald Trump look like a Nazi. But it's not just Sky News. It's mostly the establishment and left-leaning publications, which most of them are. And then this is another scene. So you've seen the BBC, what they say. But look at what they say in MSNBC, which is a left-leaning outlet, and they are controlled by the Democrats. Okay, they work for the Democrats. It actually says it in their bio.
But that jamboree happening right now, you see it there on your screen, in that place is particularly chilling because in 1939, more than 20,000 supporters of a different fascist leader.
So again, why are they comparing the Nazis and Donald Trump? Because they held a rally at Madison Square Gardens. Like, what connection is there? As I said, the Nazis killed 6 million Jews. They started World War II. They attacked countries. Did Donald Trump ever attack a country? I don't think so.
Adolf Hitler packed the Garden for a so-called pro-America rally. A rally where speakers voiced anti-Semitic rhetoric from a stage draped with...
So, did Donald Trump do that? Did he have anti-Semitic? As a matter of fact, I don't think Republicans are actually more in favor of Israel and Jewish people. So the Democrats are the anti-Semitic ones, not the Republicans.
Nazi banners. When a Jewish protester rushed the stage, the Associated Press reported, quote, instantly, a dozen or more stormtroopers set upon him, knocking him down and beating him as he held his head in his arms. Most of his clothing was torn from his body. Later, he was booked for disorderly conduct. Now, against that...
So, did that happen at the Trump rally? Again, why are you making that comparison? It's a false premise. It's a false narrative.
Backdrop of history, Donald Trump, the man who has threatened to use the military against opponents he calls...
When did ever Donald Trump say he's going to use the military against the people? Show me the quote that he said.
...enemies from within, who has...
Enemies from within is basically people with the woke mind virus that are taking the West down. Okay, they exist in America, they exist in UK, they exist all over Europe, and these people, virtue signaling people, that they have their own tyrannical agenda. We have Keir Starmer, that's the same, and I think he's an enemy from within, and he's going to sell us out to the globalists. So they are the enemy from within. But Donald Trump didn't say, I'm going to put them in prison or I'm going to use the military against them, as they have done to him. They are the ones that try to prosecute Donald Trump and send him to court. He never done that to Hillary Clinton whilst he was president. So actions speak louder than words.
And to use the troops to quell what he says are lawless cities, and to use those troops to carry out mass deportations of immigrants, is once again turning Madison Square Garden into a staging ground for extremism.
Okay, so then again, you see the same narrative being repeated by the mainstream media. MSNBC, Sky News, and BBC have done it for years now. So, in 2020, there was viable evidence of voter fraud, something that wasn't investigated by the Supreme Court and by the courts in the United States. And every time they tried to investigate it, the courts threw it out, even though they were willing to spend $150 million and investigate the Russia hoax that turned out to be a total hoax. But they wouldn't want to investigate election interference and election fraud. But now what's happening is that because of what happened in 2020, they have put a lot better restrictions and measures to figure out if there is voter fraud. And now it's only 9 days from the election. They have found evidence of voter fraud in Pennsylvania.
Good morning, everyone. District Attorney Heather Adams. On Tuesday afternoon, I was contacted by Krista Miller, who is our Chief Clerk of Elections, regarding potentially fraudulent voter registration applications that had recently been received by her office. At that time, she informed me that the Elections Office received approximately 2,500 applications at or near the deadline for registering to vote. While preparing to process these applications, staff noticed that numerous applications appeared to have the same handwriting, were filled out on the same day with unknown signatures, and some were previously registered voters, excuse me, and the signatures on file did not match the signatures on the application. So before I begin to summarize our preliminary findings, I must remind everyone that this is an ongoing investigation, and for that reason, I will be limited in the details that I can provide.
Okay, so basically you get the gist of the story. They have found evidence of voter fraud, and there was the same argument in Wisconsin and in Georgia and in Michigan in 2020 that there could be evidence of voter fraud. And I remember watching that election, and at night when I was going to bed, Donald Trump was leading easily, like he was way ahead, right? And then the next morning I wake up and Biden is winning. I've never really seen that happen, right? And there was this, I don't know if you've seen this graph where Biden's votes just goes straight up and then goes over Trump's. And I thought like that's weird. And then we found out that at 4 a.m. the next day, there was a bunch of postal votes that they didn't find, but somehow they found at 4 a.m. the day after the election. And for some reason, they were all for Biden. Not even a single one was for Trump. So isn't that a bit suspicious that they managed to find a pile of votes in swing states at 4 a.m. the next day? Sounds fishy to me. And then now we have this narrative of, January the 6th, Donald Trump tried to steal the election, when it's, viable cause and reason to think they're the ones that stole the election in 2020. Oh, January 6th, Donald Trump didn't accept it. He tried to stage a coup. And you have it now, AOC parroting this nonsense again.
This was a hate rally. Mm-hmm. This was not just a presidential rally. This was also not just a campaign rally.
How was it a hate rally? Can you point out a specific thing that was said? I watched it, and I encourage all the viewers to go and watch it as well. I think it's about 3 hours, the whole thing. But it was absolutely, I just thought it was full of positive energy, full of ideas. You had Elon Musk coming on stage, all kinds of really accomplished, intelligent people coming and setting forward their vision for the future and showing their support for Donald Trump. So in what way was it a hate rally? Can you be a bit more specific?
I think it's very important for people to understand that these are mini January 6th rallies.
How is it a mini January 6th rally? I mean, that statement is ridiculous. And the fact that MSNBC wouldn't pick it up on it. And also January the 6th, there's evidence now that it could have been an inside job, because the body cams from the police officers show that they willingly let people into the Capitol. The Capitol is one of the most heavily guarded buildings in the whole of the United States. So the fact that thousands of people have got in shows that the police were either extremely incompetent or they let them in. And also Donald Trump offered Nancy Pelosi 10,000 extra security. Nancy Pelosi said no. So is it really beyond the realms of possibility to think that January 6th was an inside job? I don't think so.
These are mini Stop the Steal rallies. These are rallies to prime an electorate into rejecting the results of an election if it doesn't go the way that they want. Because,
as I said, there was viable reason to think there was election fraud. The government wouldn't investigate it. If the investigations went through, and if they spent $150 million like they did on the Russia hoax, I guarantee you something would have been found. But they didn't investigate it. Okay? And they just done recounts. But recounts doesn't mean investigating election fraud. It's different than election interference. And as we know with the Twitter files and what happened with the Biden laptop. So they're the ones that actually interfered in the election and swung it in their favor. Okay, whether it is for interference or fraudulent votes, and it could be both. Okay, they decided to play dirty. A bunch of angry protesters go on the street. Then they let them in the Capitol. One person died in January 6th, and it was a woman that was a Republican that supported Donald Trump, and she actually served in the military. That was the only person that died on January the 6th. Not a single cop was dead. Okay, that's it. So the fact that they keep like talking about January 6th as if it's 9/11, it's ridiculous for me.
Because Donald Trump and that entire cadre of people up on that stage, Stephen Miller, etc., do not respect the law of the United States of America. And they either want to win this election or they are using rhetoric of taking it by force. That is what they mean, and that's what they're doing when they are inciting violence and hatred against Latinos, against Black Americans, against Americans who don't have children.
When did that ever happen? When, at what point did Donald Trump parrot things about Black Americans and Latinos? Wanting strong borders doesn't mean you're anti-Latinos. Okay? So stop with this constant line about things. And the fact that she's allowed on TV to speak this nonsense, and the MSNBC anchors are just sat there like a lapdog, just shaking their head.
Against, I mean, you have J.D. Vance literally talking about watering down people's right to vote, depending on if they can viably carry a child or not.
Again, this idea that the Republicans don't want people to vote, yeah? They want voter ID, okay? You need voter ID to vote. You need an ID when you want to go and buy a drink. You need an ID if you want to drive. So why can't we have voter ID? Elections are very important. So you need an ID for everything else. But for elections and for voting, you don't need an ID. That's just beyond ridiculous. And only the side that wants to cheat would say, we don't want voter ID. Okay? And their excuse is, oh, well, ID, some minorities may not have ID. So what are you saying? Are you saying Black people are too dumb to have an ID? That's quite disrespectful. Or Latinos are too dumb to have an ID. They need an ID for everything else. They need an ID for liquor. They need an ID to drive. So why can't they just bring their ID when they want to vote? Okay? And again, listen to my other video that I showed you. Voter fraud. Okay? And they try to play the good guys saying, well, we don't want people to bring ID because we're not racist. What's it got to do with race?
We have to understand how unhinged this campaign has gotten, and the only reason that the rhetoric has gotten this far is precisely because they are trying to prime the kind of froth that led up to the January 6th attack on the Capitol. And so...
Okay, so I've had enough of her, but you get the gist. And one more thing I wanted to show you is, the establishment and the media, the mainstream media, I should say, they try their hardest to make Kamala Harris look like the favorite one and the one that she's got all this support. And basically, Donald Trump was on Joe Rogan the other day, right? Within 2 days, so 48 hours, he has got 33.78 million. It's probably more now because I screenshotted that picture like 2-3 hours ago. It's probably at 40 million now. Okay? And you have all these celebrities coming and supporting Kamala Harris. I know it's all over mainstream media. It's all over the news. And guess how many views it got after 2 days? 978K. Not even a million. So this idea that Donald Trump is unpopular is just not true. Donald Trump is very popular. The numbers that he does on social media and just the views he gets and the rallies he gets. And you saw it on the Madison Square Gardens. It was sold out. It's amazing for a political figure to be able to sell out Madison Square Gardens. So, as they say, the streets are with Donald Trump. I really hope he wins the upcoming election. It's a very important thing that needs to happen. Otherwise, we're going to have the establishment and these corrupt people and the woke left taking over, which is going to take America down. Just look at the last 4 years, what happened, the inflation, the wars, and all kinds of different instability that was through America, which trickles down to the rest of the world. So don't believe the nonsense of mainstream media. Use your critical thinking. And if you can, vote for Donald Trump 2024. Thank you for watching.